War Stories, Part 3, Strange Meetings, December 1914. For most people, Christmas is a time of celebration. Presents to be opened with family and friends, heaps of rich food and drink, and optimism for the new year. So imagine the feelings of men exhausted from months of heavy fighting, homesick, missing their wives and children, and spending Christmas Eve shivering in muddy, waterlogged trenches. Their lives to be lived out in dark-looking glass world of cold, hunger, and hatred. But Christmas sometimes works a strange magic, even in conditions like these, as it did in the December of 1914. On Christmas Eve, the German guns on Western Front fell silent after dark. No shells, no murderous chatter of machine gun fire. Not even the occasional whine of a sniper bullet. The British soldiers followed their example. It was cold, clear night. Stars burned brightly in the sky. The other silence that fell over the trenches created an eerie atmosphere. Then, along some sections of the trenches, lookouts on the British side saw strange lights flickering and swinging along the German front line. Some shots were fired, but when officers peered through their trench periscopes or binoculars, they were amazed to see that these lights were illuminated from Christmas decorations. There were even some small Christmas trees hung with candles. First, many soldiers remained suspicious. After all, the British Commander-in-Chief, Field Marshal French, had issued a stern order that all units warning of a German attack over Christmas or New Year. Special vigilance will be maintained during these periods, they had been told. Then German soldiers started singing carols. Some were unfamiliar to the British soldiers, but others, such as Stille Nacht, Silent Night, were still very known to them. Then the British soldiers began to sing carols too, two sides serenading each other with shared Christmas memories. Perhaps it was hearing these familiar songs that led to the amazing events of the following day. Dawn on Christmas morning brought a thick mist over some sections of the front. But when it was cleared, the most extraordinary scene revealed itself. Along No Man's Land, in some places almost as far as the eye could see, soldiers had ventured out to meet their enemies. They huddled around in small groups, usually based around one man who could speak the other side's language. Sometimes French was the common language between them. Sometimes men spoke no language at all, communicating with smiles and gestures. Soldiers swapped cigarettes, chocolate, and beer or whiskey. Others, more daringly, exchanged items of equipment, belt buckles, regimental badges, even helmets. Before the war, many Germans had worked in England and gave some letters to be posted to friends or girlfriends they had hurriedly left in August. Several photographs were taken showing groups of German and British troops huddling together, freezing cold but quite relaxed in each other's company. Sometimes meetings like these occurred when a truce had been arranged among the officers to bury the dead left lying between the trenches. Here burial parties stopped to talk to each other. In other parts of the front, especially where opposing trenches were very close, soldiers simply called over, promising not to shoot their opponents if they would come out to meet them. Over on the front line between Friedland and Hoyupi lines, Lieutenant Jonas Nyman of the 133rd Royal Saxon Regiment faced the Scottish Seaforth Highlanders. His soldiers had boldly walked onto the pocket pockmarked land between the trenches to talk with their enemy. Now, to Nyman's astonishment, one of the Scottish soldiers had run up from a trench with a soccer ball. Then, within moments, two sets of goal posts were improvised with helmets on the frozen ground. Nyman remembered the game clearly, despite the language barrier, and the fact that these men had been trying to kill each other only the day before. The game was remarkably good-natured. Both sides played with a fierce determination to win, but all kept quite rigorously to the rules, even without the advantages of referee. The Germans were astonished to discover that the Scottish soldiers wore nothing under their kitlins. Whenever a fierce tackle or a strong gust of wind revealed a Scotsman's buttocks, they would hoot and whistle like schoolboys. The game went on for at least an hour, though soon enough word filtered back to the local German high command. The senior officers were strongly disapproving, and Nyman and other junior effects were ordered to call their men back to their trenches immediately. Still, Nyman later noted with some pride, the game finished with a score of 3 goals, 2 in favor of Fritz against Tommy. But not all the Acorns were so friendly. Other matches were played with a marked unanimity, a box match set up between two opposing regimental champions, ended with the two men offering to finish each other off in a duel at 100 paces. In some parts of the front, these strange meetings went on over the whole Christmas period. On December 30th, Yorkshire at Belton received a message from their German counterparts warning them that they would have to start firing. The message explained apologetically that a German general was coming to inspect them that afternoon. They had to put a show of belligerence when a British artillery battle was ordered to destroy the farmhouse just behind the German lines on January 1st. They too sent word to the warning them to leave the building. Other Allied soldiers, such as the French and the Belgians, met their German counterparts too, but in far fewer numbers, and not with anything like the same chorality. Perhaps the fact that the Germans were fighting from French or Belgian territory made the enmity between opponents more deeply felt and personal. Field Marshal French orders for the day Christmas Eve, warning of a possible German attack, had been issued precisely because High Command had feared such contact with an enemy might occur. It had not been unusual in early wars for troops to fraternize with the enemy on Christmas Day. In the previous century, it was not unknown for opposing generals to sit down at Christmas dinner together. The following December, after a year of diary settlement and occasional carnage, strict orders went out to both sides, forbidding the repeat of previous Christmas goodwill. Nothing of the kind is to be allowed this year. The artillery will maintain a slow gunfire on enemy trenches, commencing at dawn. Every opportunity will be taken to inflict casualties upon any enemy exposing themselves. Ran one order of the British to a division. Not everyone took notice of the order, but the fortunes of those who disobeyed were mixed. One officer in the Coldstream Guards, who had went to shake hands with German soldiers who had come unarmed over to No Man's Land, was sent home in disgrace. Other British troops who had walked out to talk to their German opponents were shelled by their own artillery, and in most places the opening mixes of previous year was successfully discouraged. One British officer noted with a grim satisfaction that when Germans opposite started to sing carols, the British had shelled them. Yet even so, some troops still made friendly gestures to their enemy. On one part of the front line, opposing British and German soldiers lit fires in oil drums with pierced sides and placed them along the tops of the trenches. It was a wonderful sight, wrote one Scottish officer. I'll never forget it. But as the war dragged on, such old-fashioned civility became increasingly rare. The casualty rate mounted. Those who survived lost many of their friends, had began to nurse increasingly bitter feelings about their enemy. By 1916 and 1917, such Christmas meetings had become extremely rare. Although they did still occur in isolated parts of the front, by then, for most soldiers, a Christmas truce seemed as distant as an unlikely end to the war itself. Even though senior officers on both sides gave orders to step up artillery bombardments over the Christmas period to ensure any such fraternization would never be repeated. The end of part 3.